We look at the big brother of the Naginata.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
We have already looked at some pole arms and we've explored in how far there are foam or polypropylene versions we can use for training. We had quite some possibilities for different types of spares. The possibilities for halberds was somewhat limited. You can find the links to the videos that I mentioned here in the description box. There was one foam Naginata from Genshin Impact that, after removing some unnecessary parts, turned into a useful Naginata, but the blade of this Naginata is rather small. Some Naginatas had significantly longer and more massive blades. From time to time, there's an additional name in the literature for a more massive type of Naginata. In Japanese, that would be Bisento, but there's a very similar weapon in China that is called Kwan-dao. I have seen metal versions of the Kwan-dao for training. I have seen wood versions for the Bisento, but the shipping costs are ridiculously high. So far, I have not really seen a cosplay version. Besides, there's one for Jujutsu Kaisen. Unfortunately, the pole of this weapon is made of two plastic pieces and the blade is made out of wood. If you swing it around, it's not very durable, so we need something else. I was looking for a blade that I could simply attach to a longer pole and then have a version of this massive pole arm. When we tested the big and heavy swords, also these videos are of course linked in the description box, there was one Chinese type of saber that had a horrible handle but a blade that resembles a Kwan-dao to a certain degree. Instead of trying to improve the handle of this thing, I simply cut this handle down thin enough so that it can stick into one of our 3-part spares. By this, we gained something that we can use for experimentation. Unfortunately, the glass fiber core within this Chinese saber was not centered. Therefore, the blade sticks now out from the pole in a non-centered way, but that's only part of the problem. If you swing this weapon around, it horribly bends. And I think that also explains why there is so far nothing on the market that goes in this direction. There's a high chance that if you bring something like that out, the thing will break under its own weight. I have seen videos on YouTube where people try to have something like this made out of wood, and occasionally also there things break off. So shouldn't be surprising. Our weapon definitely got some stress marks over the time while using it, but it gave us at least a little bit of the feel of this massive weapon. While it in principle behaves like a Naginata, it's not easy to grasp it as far at the end as you could do so with a normal Naginata because of the enormous weight. And the weight is of course also one of the advantages of this weapon. If the opponent only has a sword, this sword will likely break under the pressure of this weapon. At least some of the cosplay swords were heavily bent out of shape, close to breaking. It seems more effective to use the weapon the way you often see the Kwan-dao being used, with one hand being very close to the blade and having most of the pole sticking out at the end. So using it more like a weapon with two ends and not so much as you would expect it from a polearm. Overall, I'm a bit disappointed by this experiment. I thought this would be a genius idea. Simply take any blade, attach it to 2 sections of the 3 sections spare, and then we have an effective polearm for training. Seems not to be the case. The blade has to be light enough so that the pole can sustain the weight. I will therefore probably be forced to rethink this overall design, and I have to remove the blade from the spear and find another use for this massive blade, because now the handle has been cut down to a very narrow type of rod. I'm still looking for a better chance to get to a naginata with a longer blade. Maybe I find a good katana where I can cut down the handle so that I end up with a naginata with a longer blade. So far, most of the possible blades that I inspected, we gained not too much length in comparison to the original Yari shape. Of course, this is now complaining on a high level, because some years ago, getting pole arms was a problem in itself, at least for a reasonable price. And now I'm complaining, hey, I would like to have this type and this type and this type, and that gets more complicated. I think this still needs to be pointed out. The market now has become much better. And of course, these several section types pole arms are not optimal, but as shipping costs are low, you can get a pole arm for under 30 bucks in some cases that measure 1 meter 80. And for less than 100 bucks, you can get to a 3 meter pole arm. That was unthinkable some years ago. So although the experiment with the Kwan-dao / Bisento has failed in part, it was still fun to experiment with it and recognize that I probably prefer a naginata with a longer blade, but a significantly more slender and less hefty blade. Hey, but didn't you have a longer bladed naginata in one of your videos? Was that not a LARP version? Yeah, and this is exactly the problem with this weapon and with polearms in general. If we look at the LARP polearms, we have one really significant problem. The handles are usually wrapped in either faux leather or leather, or they are of course covered with latex, and that makes the thing less slidey. It's not ideal with the cosplay spears and naginatas with this 3-section type of poles, but they glide at least to a certain degree, and with this emulate what you would expect from a polearm, that you can fast change the grip, that you can extend it, that you can withdraw it. This is very important for any use of polearm, not only for the Chinese versions but also for training European moves. We have to be able to slide along the pole, and that's unfortunately basically impossible with most of the LARP weapons I have seen so far. Maybe there's a new development that I have missed, but my experience with the LARP weapons so far tells me that the cosplay polearms are much superior. Although this was now not a big success and a good advice for you to how to get to a Kwan-dao or Bisento for training, we still hope we could inspire you a bit and hope to see you around next time.